the watcher next door. It's not paranoia if it's actually happening. Lina Driter lives a life of solitude, her existence confined to the walls of her Madrid City home. An agoraphobic recluse, she fills her days with an excessive amount of wine, old classic movies, and nostalgia for happier times. Her only connection to the outside world is her window, through which she spies on her neighbors, constructing stories about their lives to fill the void in her own. When the Tonio family moves into the house across the street, Lina becomes fascinated by them. The father, mother, and their teenage son appear to be the epitome of a perfect family. But one night, Lina witnesses something that shatters this illusion. What she sees, or thinks she sees, sets off a chain of events that plunges her into a web of confusion, fear, and doubt. As Lina grapples with the possibility that she may have witnessed a crime, she begins to question her own sanity. Is her mind playing tricks on her, or is there a darker reality unfolding beyond her window? As the lines between imagination and reality blur, Lina must navigate a treacherous path to uncover the truth. In The Watcher Next Door, nothing is as it seems. Trust is a fragile thing, and in a world of shadows and secrets, Lina must decide who, if anyone, she can rely on. This psychological thriller weaves a tale of suspense and intrigue that will keep readers on the edge of their seats until the very last page. Index Shadows in the Night, The Prisoner of Madrid, Through the Looking Glass, The Perfect Family, a glimpse of horror reality, unraveled spiral of doubt, echoes of the past, trust and betrayal, the game of deceit, pieces of the puzzle, the mask of sanity, the unseen enemy confronting the truth, the final twist, reflections from the window. Shadows in the night. The city of Madrid lay silent, its bustling streets hushed under the weight of the night. A gentle breeze whispered through the alleys, carrying with it the distant hum of late-night traffic and the occasional bark of a stray dog. But within her apartment, Lina Driter was wide awake, her eyes fixed on the world beyond her window. The dim glow of the streetlights cast long shadows, playing tricks on the mind, distorting the familiar into the unknown. For Lina, these shadows were her companions, the only witnesses to her sleepless nights. She was a prisoner of her own making, her agoraphobia confining her to the four walls that had become both her sanctuary and her cage. Every night, Lina would take her place by the window, a glass of wine in hand, her gaze drifting over the buildings that surrounded her. She found solace in the routine, a strange comfort in the predictability of her neighbors' lives. She knew their schedules, their habits, the small details that made up their daily existence. It was her way of feeling connected to a world she could no longer touch. But tonight was different. The arrival of the Tonio family had injected a new sense of purpose into Lina's nightly vigil. They had moved in just a week ago, a picture-perfect family with their polished smiles and seemingly idyllic life. Lina watched them with a mix of curiosity and envy, crafting stories about their lives, filling in the gaps with her imagination. As she sipped her wine, her eyes wandered to the Tonio house. The lights were on, casting a warm glow through the windows. She could see the silhouettes of the family members moving about, a glimpse into their private world. Lina felt a pang of loneliness, a reminder of what she had lost. Suddenly, a movement caught her eye. A shadow flitted across one of the upstairs windows, quick and furtive. Lina leaned closer, her heart quickening. She squinted, trying to make sense of what she had seen. Was it her mind playing tricks on her, or was there something more sinister at play? Her breath caught as the shadow reappeared, more defined this time. It was a figure, moving stealthily through the room. Lina's grip tightened on her wine glass, her pulse pounding in her ears. She watched in silence, her eyes glued to the scene unfolding before her. The figure moved closer to the window, and for a brief moment, Lina caught a glimpse of a face. It was contorted with fear, eyes wide and frantic. And then, just as quickly, the shadow was gone, swallowed by the darkness. Lina's mind raced, 1,000 thoughts colliding. Had she really seen what she thought she had? Or was it a figment of her imagination, a product of her isolated existence? She couldn't be sure. But one thing was certain, her world had just been turned upside down. As she stood there, staring into the night, a chilling realization washed over her. What she had witnessed was no ordinary occurrence. It was a harbinger of something far more sinister. And in that moment, Lina knew that her life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. The shadows in the night had whispered their secret, and now, there was no turning back. The prisoner of Madrid, Lina Driter, awoke to the familiar sounds of the city stirring to life. The distant hum of traffic, the clatter of footsteps on the pavement below, and the muffled conversations of neighbors drifting through the thin walls of her apartment. But for Lina, these sounds were mere echoes of a world she could no longer face. Her bedroom was dim, the curtains drawn tightly against the morning light. She lay in bed for a moment, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of her agoraphobia pressing down on her chest. It had been years since she had ventured outside, her fear of open spaces growing stronger with each passing day. The world beyond her front door was a terrifying expanse, filled with unknown dangers and unpredictable encounters. Slowly, Lina pushed herself up and swung her legs over the side of the bed. The cool floor beneath her feet grounded her, anchoring her to the present. She moved through her morning routine with practiced ease, the rituals of her day providing a semblance of normalcy. A quick shower, a cup of coffee, and then to her usual spot by the window. The window was her lifeline, her only connection to the world outside. From her vantage point, she could see the bustling streets of Madrid, the people going about their daily lives, unaware of the woman who watched them from her self-imposed prison. Lina found solace in these glimpses of normalcy, the predictable patterns of her neighbors' lives a stark contrast to the chaos within her own mind. She settled into her chair, her gaze drifting to the house across the street. The Tonio family had become her latest fascination, their arrival a welcome distraction from her own troubles. She watched them with a mix of curiosity and longing, imagining the stories behind their polished facade. Today, the Tonio household was a hive of activity. The father, Juan, was in the driveway, tinkering with his car. His wife, Sofia, was in the garden, tending to the vibrant flowers that lined the front yard. Their teenage son, Marco, was nowhere to be seen, likely at school or with friends. Lina watched them with a sense of detachment, her own isolation making their normalcy seem almost alien. As she sipped her coffee, Lina's thoughts drifted to the events of the previous night. The shadow she had seen, the figure moving furtively through the Tonio house, the glimpse of a frightened face. It had unsettled her, stirring a dormant part of her mind that had long been numbed by routine and fear. Had it been real? Or was it a trick of the light, a figment of her imagination conjured by years of isolation? Lina shook her head, trying to dispel the lingering unease. She had always prided herself on her keen observational skills, her ability to notice the smallest details. It was a skill honed by years of watching, a necessary tool for someone who rarely left the confines of her home. But last night's vision had shaken her confidence, blurring the line between reality and imagination. She took another sip of coffee, her eyes never leaving the Tonio house. She needed to know the truth, to understand what she had seen. It was a dangerous curiosity, one that threatened to pull her deeper into the shadows of her own mind. But Lina couldn't help herself. The need to uncover the truth was too strong, the urge to break free from her prison too powerful. As the day wore on, Lina's anxiety grew. She watched the Tonio family with increasing intensity, her mind racing with possibilities. What if she had witnessed a crime? What if someone was in danger? The questions gnawed at her, fueling her determination to uncover the truth. Lina's world had been confined to the four walls of her apartment for too long. But now, the shadows were closing in, and she knew she had to confront them. The prison of her mind was crumbling, and in its place, a new resolve was taking shape. She would find the truth, no matter the cost. As the sun set over Madrid, casting long shadows across the city, Lina prepared herself for what lay ahead. The darkness held secrets, and it was time for her to uncover them. Through the looking glass, the late afternoon sun cast a golden glow across the city, its rays filtering through the curtains and illuminating the dust motes that danced in the air. Lina Driter sat by her window, her eyes fixed on the Tonio house across the street. The events of the previous night had left her restless, her mind a whirl of unanswered questions and unsettling possibilities. Her fingers traced the rim of her wine glass, the cool glass a familiar comfort. She took a sip, the liquid warming her as she settled into her chair. From her vantage point, she could see Sofia Tonio in the garden, her hands busy among the flowers. Juan was still working on his car, his movements precise and focused. There was no sign of Marco, their teenage son, but that was not unusual for this time of day. Lina's gaze wandered over the house, her eyes searching for any sign of the shadow she had seen the night before. Her mind replayed the scene over and over, the fleeting glimpse of a frightened face, the sense of something amiss. It had felt so real, so immediate. But now, in the light of day, she couldn't be sure. Had it been a trick of her imagination, a product of too much wine and too little sleep? She sighed, leaning back in her chair. The boundaries of her world were so narrow, the days blending into one another in a monotonous cycle. The Tonios had been a bright spot, their presence a new story to watch unfold. But now, that story had taken a dark turn, and Lina found herself drawn deeper into the mystery. Her eyes flicked to the second-floor window where she had seen the shadow. It was closed now, the curtains drawn tightly shut. She wondered what lay behind those curtains, what secrets were hidden within those walls. Her curiosity was a double-edged sword, driving her to uncover the truth but also threatening to pull her deeper into her own fears. As she watched, the front door of the Tonio house opened, and Marco stepped out. He was tall and lean, his dark hair falling into his eyes as he adjusted his backpack. He paused on the steps, looking around as if searching for something. Lina felt a pang of empathy for the boy. In many ways, he reminded her of herself at that age, curious, observant, and perhaps a little lost. Marco's gaze drifted to her window, and for a moment, their eyes met. Lina felt a jolt of surprise, her heart skipping a beat. She quickly looked away, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. She had always been careful to remain unnoticed, a silent observer in the lives of her neighbors. But now, she wondered if she had been seen, if her secret watch had been discovered. She glanced back, but Marco was already walking down the street, his attention elsewhere. Lina let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, her heart still racing. She had to be more careful, she told herself. She couldn't afford to draw attention, not now when the stakes were so high. The hours passed slowly, the shadows lengthening as the sun dipped below the horizon. Lina remained at her post, her eyes glued to the Tonio house. The night brought with it a sense of foreboding, the familiar comfort of her routines giving way to a growing unease. As darkness fell, the house across the street seemed to change, taking on an ominous air. The lights inside flickered on, casting eerie shadows that danced across the walls. Lina's pulse quickened, her senses heightened as she watched and waited. It was past midnight when she saw it. A shadow, moving stealthily across the second-floor window. Her heart leapt into her throat as she strained to see, her breath coming in shallow gasps. The figure was there, unmistakable this time. It moved with purpose, pausing briefly before disappearing from view. Lina's mind raced, her thoughts a chaotic jumble of fear and determination. She had to do something, had to find a way to uncover the truth. But how? Her agoraphobia kept her trapped, her fear of the outside world a constant barrier. Desperation drove her to action. She grabbed her phone, her hands trembling as she dialed the number she hadn't called in years. The phone rang once, twice, before a familiar voice answered. "Lina. Is that you?" The voice was warm, concerned. Her older brother, Javier. "Javier, I need your help," Lina said, her voice shaking. "I think I saw something. Across the street. I need you to come over." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "What do you mean, you saw something?" Lina took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I think I witnessed a crime. Please, Javier. I need you." The silence stretched on, and then Javier's voice came through, resolute and reassuring. "I'll be there as soon as I can." As Lina hung up the phone, she felt a surge of relief mixed with apprehension. Help was on the way, but so were the answers she both feared and sought. Through the looking glass, she had seen a glimpse of a hidden world, and there was no turning back now. The perfect family. The following morning, Lina awoke with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. Her conversation with Javier had given her hope, a lifeline to cling to amidst the uncertainty. She moved through her routine with a renewed energy, her mind focused on the task at hand. As she sipped her coffee and settled into her chair by the window, she steeled herself for another day of watching and waiting. The Tonio house was quiet, its facade betraying no hint of the secrets Lina believed it held. Sophia was in the garden, tending to her flowers with the same meticulous care as always. Juan had left early, his car no longer in the driveway. Marco was at school, his absence leaving a palpable void. It was a picture of domestic tranquility, a perfect family living a perfect life. But Lina knew better. She had seen the cracks in the facade, the shadows that lurked beneath the surface. As the hours passed, Lina's mind wandered to her own family. She and Javier had been close once, their bond forged through shared experiences and mutual support. But her agoraphobia had driven a wedge between them, her isolation creating a chasm that had grown wider with each passing year. She wondered if this crisis might be the catalyst to bridge that gap, to reconnect with the brother who had always been her protector. Lina's reverie was interrupted by the sound of footsteps approaching her door. Her heart leapt into her throat as she rose from her chair, her pulse quickening. She hesitated for a moment, then moved to open the door. Javier stood on the other side, his expression a mix of concern and determination. "Lina," he said, his voice soft yet firm. "It's been too long." She nodded, tears welling in her eyes as she stepped aside to let him in. "Thank you for coming, Javier. I didn't know who else to turn to." He embraced her briefly, then pulled back to look at her. "Tell me everything. What did you see?" They sat down in the living room, and Lina recounted the events of the past few days. She described the shadowy figure, the sense of fear that had gripped her, and her growing conviction that something was terribly wrong in the Tonio house. Javier listened intently, his brow furrowed in concentration. When she finished, he leaned back, his expression thoughtful. "It sounds serious, Lina. But we need more than just your word. We need proof." Lina nodded, her resolve hardening. "I know. That's why I need your help. I can't do this alone." Javier glanced out the window at the Tonio house. "All right. Let's start by gathering as much information as we can. We need to be careful, though. If there's really something going on, we can't risk tipping them off." For the next few days, Javier and Lina worked together, their bond slowly rekindling as they delved deeper into the mystery. Javier discreetly observed the Tonio family from outside, while Lina continued her watch from her window. They compared notes, piecing together a puzzle that seemed to grow more complex with each new detail. It was on the fourth day that they finally caught a break. Lina had noticed a pattern in Sophia's behavior. Every evening, around the same time, she would disappear into the house for exactly 15 minutes. Curious, Lina timed her comings and goings, noting the precision with which she adhered to this routine. Javier agreed to investigate further. Under the cover of darkness, he approached the Tonio house, careful to stay hidden from view. Lina watched from her window, her heart in her throat as Javier crept closer. He positioned himself near a side window, peering inside. Minutes passed, each one stretching into an eternity. Then, Javier returned, his expression grim. He climbed back up to Lina's apartment, his face shadowed by what he had seen. "What did you find?" Lina asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Javier took a deep breath. "There's a locked room on the second floor. I saw Sophia go in, and when she came out, she looked different. Nervous. Whatever's in that room, they're trying to keep it hidden." Lina's mind raced, her thoughts a chaotic whirl of possibilities. "What do we do now?" "We need to get inside," Javier said, his voice steady. "We need to see what's in that room. But we have to be careful. If they catch us, who knows what they might do." Lina nodded, a mixture of fear and determination settling over her. The perfect family was hiding something, and she was determined to uncover the truth. With Javier by her side, she felt a glimmer of hope, a sense of purpose that had long been absent from her life. As they prepared to take the next step, Lina couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something profound, a revelation that would change everything. The shadows in the Tonio house held secrets, and she was determined to bring them into the light. A glimpse of horror. The night was still, a heavy silence settling over Madrid as the city slept. Lina and Javier had spent the day meticulously planning their next move, their determination growing with each passing hour. The perfect family across the street had secrets, and it was time to uncover them. Lina sat by the window, her eyes glued to the Tonio house. The familiar glow of the evening lights flickered on, casting long shadows that danced across the walls. Sophia moved through the garden, her movements precise and deliberate. Juan was inside, the faint sound of his laughter reaching Lina's ears. Everything seemed normal, but Lina knew better. She turned to Javier, who was crouched beside her, his eyes fixed on the house. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, his expression grim. "Let's do this." They waited until the house was dark, the Tonio family presumably asleep. Javier moved first, slipping out the back door and disappearing into the shadows. Lina watched him go, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew the risks they were taking, but the need for answers outweighed her fear. Javier reached the Tonio house, his movements silent and precise. He had come prepared, a set of lock-picking tools in hand. Lina held her breath as she watched him work, the minutes stretching into an eternity. Finally, the window creaked open, and Javier slipped inside. Lina's fingers tightened around the edge of the windowsill, her pulse racing. She forced herself to stay calm, to focus on the task at hand. She knew Javier would be careful, but the uncertainty gnawed at her. What if they were caught? What if something went wrong? Inside the house, Javier moved with caution, his footsteps light on the hardwood floors. He made his way to the second floor, where Lina had seen the shadowy figure. The door to the locked room stood before him, an ominous barrier to the secrets within. Javier knelt, his hands steady as he worked the lock. It took longer than he anticipated, the mechanism stubborn and unyielding. But finally, with a soft click, the door swung open. The room was dark, the air thick with an oppressive silence. Javier hesitated for a moment, then stepped inside, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. The beam of light swept across the room, revealing a scene that made his blood run cold. The room was a shrine to secrecy, filled with objects that spoke of a hidden life. Photographs covered the walls, each one depicting the Tonio family in various stages of their lives. But these were not the happy, smiling faces Lina had observed. The expressions were strained, fearful, a stark contrast to the facade they presented to the world. In the center of the room stood a large, ornate cabinet. Javier's breath caught in his throat as he approached it, his hand trembling as he reached for the handle. He hesitated, a deep sense of foreboding washing over him. But he had to know the truth. He opened the cabinet, and the horror inside took his breath away. Bound and gagged, a young woman lay inside, her eyes wide with terror. She was bruised and battered, her clothes torn and dirty. Javier's heart pounded in his chest as he realized the full extent of the Tonio family's secret. He quickly moved to untie her, his hands shaking. "It's okay," he whispered. "I'm here to help you." The woman looked at him with a mix of fear and hope, her eyes pleading. "Please, get me out of here," she whispered, her voice hoarse. Javier nodded, working quickly to free her. He knew they didn't have much time. He helped her to her feet, supporting her as they made their way to the window. Lina watched in horror as Javier emerged, the woman clinging to him for support. They made their way back to Lina's apartment, moving as quickly and quietly as they could. Once inside, Javier locked the door behind them, his heart still racing. Lina rushed to their side, her eyes wide with shock. "Who is she?" Lina asked, her voice trembling. The woman looked at them both, tears streaming down her face. "My name is Anna," she said. "They've been keeping me prisoner. I don't know how long I've been here. Please, you have to help me." Lina and Javier exchanged a look, the gravity of the situation settling over them. The perfect family was nothing but a facade, a mask hiding unspeakable horrors. As they tended to Anna, Lina knew their lives had changed forever. The shadows in the Tonio house had revealed their secrets, and there was no turning back now. The glimpse of horror they had uncovered was just the beginning. A glimpse of horror. The night was thick with tension as Lina and Javier prepared for their daring mission. The city of Madrid lay silent, a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing within Lina's apartment. They had spent the day meticulously planning every detail, knowing that one wrong move could spell disaster. The Tonio family was hiding something, and it was time to uncover the truth. Lina watched anxiously from her window as Javier made his way across the street, moving like a shadow in the darkness. Her heart pounded in her chest, her breath coming in shallow gasps. She had never felt so helpless, confined by her fear while her brother ventured into the unknown. Javier reached the side of the Tonio house, his body pressed against the wall as he surveyed the area. The house was dark, its inhabitants presumably asleep. He pulled a small set of lock-picking tools from his pocket and began working on the side window. Lina held her breath, her eyes never leaving him. After what felt like an eternity, the window slid open silently, and Javier slipped inside. Lina's hands shook as she clutched the edge of the windowsill, her eyes straining to see any sign of movement inside the Tonio house. She felt a wave of nausea wash over her as she imagined all the things that could go wrong. She had to trust Javier, trust that he could handle whatever awaited him inside. Inside the house, Javier moved with practiced stealth, his steps light on the wooden floor. He navigated through the darkened rooms, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. He made his way to the second floor, where Lina had seen the mysterious figure. The house was eerily silent, the only sound his own breathing. Javier reached the door to the locked room. He paused, his heart racing, and took a deep breath before getting to work on the lock. It was a stubborn one, but after a few tense moments, he heard the satisfying click of the mechanism giving way. He pushed the door open slowly, his flashlight revealing the room within. The sight that greeted him made his blood run cold. The room was filled with an array of disturbing items, photographs of the Tonio family, but not the happy, smiling faces Lina had observed from her window. These were images of fear and distress, the family members caught in moments of apparent suffering. There were documents, strange tools, and other items that hinted at something sinister. But it was the large cabinet in the corner that drew Javier's attention. He approached it cautiously, his heart pounding in his ears. He reached for the handle, steeling himself for what he might find inside. As he opened the cabinet, his flashlight illuminated a sight that would haunt him forever. A young woman lay inside, bound and gagged, her eyes wide with terror. She was bruised and battered, her clothes torn and dirty. She looked up at Javier with a mixture of fear and desperation, silently pleading for help. Javier quickly moved to untie her, his hands shaking. "It's okay," he whispered. "I'm here to help you." The woman's eyes filled with tears as she whispered back, her voice hoarse. "Please, get me out of here." Javier nodded, working swiftly to free her. He helped her to her feet, supporting her as they made their way back to the window. Lina watched in horror as they emerged, her heart breaking for the woman they had rescued. Once inside Lina's apartment, they locked the door and helped the woman to a chair. Lina grabbed a blanket and wrapped it around her, offering what comfort she could. The woman looked at them with gratitude and fear, her body trembling. "Who are you?" Lina asked gently. "What happened to you?" The woman took a deep breath, her voice barely above a whisper. "My name is Anna. They kidnapped me. I've been held captive for months, maybe longer. I don't even know how long it's been." Lina and Javier exchanged a look, the gravity of the situation settling over them. The perfect family was a facade, a mask hiding unspeakable horrors. As they tended to Anna, Lina felt a surge of determination. They had uncovered a terrible truth, and now they had to act. "We need to call the police," Javier said firmly. "Anna needs help, and the Tonio family needs to be stopped." Lina nodded, reaching for her phone. She dialed the emergency number, her hands steady despite the fear coursing through her. As she spoke to the operator, she glanced at Anna, who was watching her with a mixture of hope and fear. The police arrived quickly, their presence a reassuring force in the midst of chaos. They took statements, gathered evidence, and assured Anna that she was safe now. As they escorted the Tonio family out in handcuffs, Lina watched from her window, a mixture of relief and horror washing over her. The glimpse of horror they had uncovered was just the beginning. Lina knew there would be more to face, more questions to answer. But for now, they had taken a crucial step towards justice. The shadows in the Tonio house had revealed their secrets, and there was no turning back. Reality unraveled. The days following the rescue of Anna were a blur of police interviews, media coverage, and restless nights. Lina felt as though she were living in a waking nightmare, each new revelation about the Tonio family further unraveling her sense of reality. The story of their perfect life had shattered, leaving behind a dark, twisted truth that seemed almost too horrific to comprehend. Lina sat in her living room, staring blankly at the news broadcast on her television. The screen displayed images of the Tonio family being led away in handcuffs, their faces pale and expressionless. Reporters clamored for details, their voices blending into a cacophony of speculation and outrage. The story had captured the public's imagination, the perfect family turned nightmare. Beside her, Javier was on the phone with one of the detectives, discussing the latest developments in the case. Lina could hear snippets of the conversation, words like investigation evidence and charges standing out amidst the static of her own thoughts. She felt numb, disconnected from the world around her. Anna was staying with them temporarily, under police protection until a more permanent arrangement could be made. She sat quietly in the corner, her eyes distant as she tried to process her own trauma. Lina had tried to talk to her, to offer comfort, but Anna's ordeal had left deep scars, and healing would take time. Javier hung up the phone and turned to Lina, his expression serious. The police have found more evidence. It looks like the Tonios were involved in some kind of human trafficking ring. Anna was just one of many victims. Lina felt a wave of nausea wash over her. The reality of what had been happening right under her nose was almost too much to bear. How could they hide something like this? They seemed so normal. Javier shook his head, his eyes filled with a mixture of anger and sadness. People like them are good at hiding their true nature. They put on a facade, but underneath, they're capable of unspeakable things. We were lucky to find Anna when we did. Lina nodded, her mind racing with questions. What happens now? The police will continue their investigation. They're trying to track down the other victims and bring everyone involved to justice. It's going to be a long process, Javier said, his voice heavy with the weight of the situation. Lina glanced at Anna, who was staring out the window, her expression haunted. What about Anna? What will happen to her? Javier sighed. She'll need a lot of support and therapy. The police are arranging for a safe place for her to stay, and they'll help her get the resources she needs to recover. Lina felt a pang of guilt. She had been so focused on uncovering the truth that she hadn't fully considered the impact on Anna's life. I want to help her, she said softly. I feel responsible. Javier placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You've already done so much, Lina. You helped save her life. Just being there for her now is more than enough. The days turned into weeks, and slowly, life began to settle into a new kind of normal. The media frenzy died down, and the Tonio house stood empty, a grim reminder of the horrors that had been uncovered. Lina continued to watch from her window, her curiosity now mingled with a deep sense of vigilance. She knew she could never go back to the way things were, her innocence shattered by the reality she had uncovered. Anna moved into a safe house, her path to recovery just beginning. She and Lina stayed in touch, their bond forged in the crucible of shared trauma. Anna often visited, and they spent hours talking, trying to make sense of the events that had changed their lives forever. One evening, as they sat together in Lina's living room, Anna turned to her, her eyes filled with gratitude. "You saved me, Lina. If it weren't for you, I don't know where I'd be right now." Lina felt a lump in her throat, tears welling in her eyes. "I just did what anyone would do," she said, her voice trembling. Anna shook her head. "Not everyone would have had the courage. You saw something wrong and acted, even when it was dangerous. You're a hero." Lina smiled weakly, the weight of the word hero heavy on her shoulders. She didn't feel like a hero. She was just a woman who had been trapped by her own fears, who had stumbled into a nightmare and done what she could to survive. But Anna's words gave her a sense of purpose, a reason to keep moving forward. As the months passed, Lina continued to work on overcoming her agoraphobia. With Javier's support and Anna's friendship, she began to venture outside, each step a small victory. She knew the journey would be long and difficult, but she was no longer alone. The ordeal had taught her the value of connection, of reaching out to others and finding strength in unity. The shadows that had once loomed so large in Lina's life began to recede, replaced by the light of hope and determination. The Tonio family's secrets had been brought to light, and justice was slowly being served. Lina knew there were still battles to fight, still wounds to heal, but for the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of possibility. Reality had unraveled, revealing the darkness beneath the surface. But in that darkness, Lina had found her own strength, and with it, the courage to face whatever came next. The spiral of doubt as the initial chaos of the Tonio family's arrest began to subside, Lina found herself grappling with a new, insidious enemy, doubt. The once clear lines of reality had blurred, and she struggled to trust her own perceptions. The world outside her window seemed both familiar and alien, every shadow a potential threat. The media circus had moved on to the next big story, leaving Lina to face her inner turmoil in relative quiet. Javier continued to support her, visiting regularly and encouraging her to step outside her comfort zone. Anna, too, remained a steadfast presence, her resilience a source of inspiration. But despite their efforts, Lina felt increasingly isolated within the walls of her apartment. One afternoon, as Lina sat by her window, she noticed a man loitering near the empty Tonio house. He was tall, with a hood pulled low over his face. Her heart began to race, memories of the horrors she had uncovered flooding back. She watched him intently, every fiber of her being screaming that something was wrong. Javier arrived a short while later, his usual calm demeanor a stark contrast to Lina's growing anxiety. She pointed out the man to him, her voice trembling. "He's been standing there for over an hour. Something about him feels off." Javier peered out the window, his brow furrowing. "I see him. He does look suspicious. But it could just be a passerby." Lina shook her head, her agitation mounting. "No, Javier. He's watching the house. What if he's connected to the Tonios? What if there are more people involved?" Javier placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Lina, I understand why you're scared. But we can't jump to conclusions. I'll call the police and have them check it out, okay?" Lina nodded, but the unease remained. She watched as Javier made the call, her eyes never leaving the man outside. By the time the police arrived, the man had disappeared, leaving only more questions in his wake. That night, Lina found sleep elusive. Every creak and groan of the building seemed amplified, her mind conjuring images of unseen intruders. She tossed and turned, the weight of her doubts pressing down on her. The following days were a struggle. Lina's once relied upon routine became a source of frustration and fear. The boundaries of her apartment, which had once offered solace, now felt like a prison. She questioned everything, her memories, her perceptions, even her sanity. One evening, Anna came to visit, sensing Lina's distress. They sat in the living room, the familiar space now tinged with an undercurrent of tension. Anna began gently, "I know this is hard. What we went through, it's natural to feel scared and uncertain. But you're not alone. We're here for you." Lina looked at Anna, her eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and despair. I don't know what's real anymore. Every time I look out that window, I see shadows. I can't trust myself." Anna reached out, taking Lina's hand in hers. "You're stronger than you think. You saw something wrong and acted on it. You saved me. And now, you need to trust yourself again. Take it one step at a time." Lina nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I'm trying, Anna. But it's so hard." "I know," Anna said softly. "But remember, every small victory counts. Start with something manageable. Maybe we can go for a walk together, just around the block." The idea filled Lina with a mixture of fear and hope. She hadn't ventured outside in years, but the thought of facing her fears with Anna by her side gave her a glimmer of courage. "Okay," Lina said finally. "Let's try." The next day, Lina and Anna stood at the threshold of the apartment building, the world outside both daunting and inviting. Lina's heart raced, her palms sweaty as she gripped the doorknob. Anna gave her an encouraging smile, and together, they stepped out into the sunlight. The first few steps were tentative, each one a battle against the fear that threatened to overwhelm her. But with Anna's steady presence, Lina pushed forward. They walked slowly, the city around them bustling with life. Every noise, every movement seemed exaggerated, but Lina focused on Anna, drawing strength from her friend's unwavering support. They made it around the block, a small victory that felt monumental. As they returned to the apartment, Lina felt a sense of accomplishment, a spark of hope that perhaps she could reclaim her life. But that night, the doubts returned. Lina dreamed of the hooded man, his face a blur of menace. She awoke in a cold sweat, the shadows in her room closing in around her. The spiral of doubt tightened its grip, threatening to undo the progress she had made. In the days that followed, Lina fought to hold on to the fragments of her newfound courage. She continued to take small steps, each one a defiance against the fear that sought to control her. Javier and Anna remained her anchors, their support a lifeline in the turbulent sea of her emotions. The journey was far from over, and the road ahead was fraught with challenges. But Lina knew that she couldn't let the darkness win. She had uncovered a horrific truth and saved a life. Now, she had to find a way to save herself, to unravel the doubts that threatened to consume her and reclaim her sense of reality. With each step, Lina reminded herself that she was not alone. The spiral of doubt might be strong, but so was she. And with the support of those who cared for her, she would find a way to emerge from the shadows and into the light. Chapter 7, Echoes of the Past. The days turned into weeks, and Lina's battle with doubt continued unabated. Despite her efforts to reclaim her sense of reality, the shadows of the past lingered, their presence a constant reminder of the horrors she had uncovered. Every sound, every shadow seemed to whisper of the darkness that lurked just beyond her reach. One evening, as Lina sat in her living room, lost in thought, a knock at the door shattered the silence. She started, her heart racing as she glanced nervously at the clock. Who could be visiting at this hour? With trembling hands, Lina approached the door, her mind racing with fear and uncertainty. She peered through the peephole, her breath catching in her throat as she saw the figure on the other side. It was a woman, her features obscured by the darkness. "Who is it?" Lina called out, her voice barely above a whisper. There was a moment of silence, then the woman spoke, her voice soft and hesitant. "Lina. It's me, Elena. I need to talk to you." Lina's heart skipped a beat at the sound of the name. Elena. It had been years since she had heard that name, years since she had last seen her childhood friend. But the memories came flooding back in an instant, a rush of nostalgia and longing. With trembling hands, Lina unlocked the door and opened it, her eyes widening in surprise as she saw the woman standing before her. It was indeed Elena, her once vibrant features now drawn and haggard. "Elena," Lina said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's been so long. What are you doing here?" Elena stepped inside, her movements hesitant. She glanced around the room, her eyes lingering on the familiar surroundings. "I heard about what happened with the Tonio family. I wanted to see how you were doing." Lina felt a surge of emotion at the mention of the Tonios. The memories of that fateful night came rushing back, a tidal wave of fear and uncertainty. She had uncovered their secrets, saved Anna, and yet the darkness still lingered. I'm okay," Lina said, her voice trembling. "It's been difficult, but I'm managing." Elena nodded, her expression sympathetic. "I can only imagine. I've been following the news closely. It's hard to believe something like that could happen in our neighborhood." Lina felt a shiver run down her spine at the mention of the neighborhood. It was a place filled with memories, both good and bad. Elena had been a part of those memories, a friend she had lost touch with over the years. "How have you been, Elena?" Lina asked, her curiosity piqued. "It's been so long since we last saw each other." Elena's gaze grew distant, her eyes clouded with sorrow. "I've been struggling. Life hasn't been easy since everything happened." Lina felt a pang of guilt at the mention of their shared past. She had left those memories behind, buried them deep within her subconscious. But now, faced with Elena's presence, they threatened to resurface, a reminder of the pain and heartache they had both endured. "I'm sorry, Elena," Lina said softly. "I didn't mean to dredge up the past." Elena shook her head, a sad smile playing at her lips. "It's okay, Lina. We can't change the past, but we can learn from it. And maybe we can find some closure together." Lina felt a flicker of hope at Elena's words. Closure. It was something she had longed for, a way to put the ghosts of the past to rest. Perhaps Elena held the key to unlocking those memories, to finding peace in the midst of chaos. As they sat together in the dimly lit room, the echoes of the past seemed to surround them, a reminder of the bond they had shared and the trials they had faced. Lina didn't know what the future held, but she knew that with Elena by her side, she was no longer alone. And together, they would confront the shadows of the past and find a way to move forward, one step at a time. Trust and betrayal. The days passed with an uneasy tension hanging in the air, each moment fraught with uncertainty. Lina's reunion with Elena had stirred up memories she had long tried to forget, and the shadows of the past seemed to loom larger than ever. Despite Elena's seemingly genuine concern, Lina couldn't shake the feeling of unease that gnawed at her insides. One evening, as Lina sat alone in her apartment, lost in thought, there was a soft knock at the door. She started, her heart pounding in her chest as she glanced nervously at the clock. Who could be visiting at this hour? With a sense of dread knotting in her stomach, Lina approached the door cautiously, her mind racing with fear and uncertainty. She peered through the peephole, her breath catching in her throat as she saw the figure on the other side. It was Elena. "Hello, Lina," Elena said, her voice soft and measured. "May I come in?" Lina hesitated, her instincts screaming at her to keep the door closed. But something in Elena's eyes made her pause, a flicker of vulnerability that stirred a pang of sympathy in Lina's heart. Against her better judgment, she unlocked the door and let Elena inside. Elena stepped into the apartment, her movements graceful and controlled. She glanced around the room, her eyes taking in the familiar surroundings with a sense of nostalgia. "It's been a long time since I've been here," Elena said, her voice tinged with sadness. "So many memories." Lina felt a twinge of guilt at the mention of their shared past. She had spent years trying to forget the pain and heartache they had both endured, burying the memories deep within her subconscious. But now, faced with Elena's presence once again, those memories threatened to resurface, a reminder of the bond they had once shared and the betrayal that had torn them apart. "What do you want, Elena?" Lina asked, her voice tinged with suspicion. "Why are you here?" Elena turned to face her, her expression unreadable. "I wanted to talk to you, Lina." To apologize." Lina's eyes narrowed, her defenses rising. "Apologize for what?" Elena hesitated, her gaze flickering away for a moment before returning to meet Lina's. "For everything. For the way things ended between us. For betraying your trust." Lina felt a surge of anger welling up inside her, threatening to spill over. The wounds of the past were still raw, the pain of Elena's betrayal still fresh in her mind. She had trusted Elena once, had confided in her and shared her deepest secrets, only to have that trust shattered by lies and deception. "You expect me to believe you're sorry?" Lina spat, her voice laced with bitterness. "After everything you did? After the lies and the betrayal?" Elena's eyes filled with tears, her voice trembling with emotion. "I know I can't change the past, Lina. I know I hurt you, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. But I want to make things right. I want to earn back your trust." Lina felt a surge of conflicting emotions swirling inside her. Part of her wanted to believe Elena, to forgive her for the pain she had caused. But another part of her, a part that had been hardened by years of solitude and mistrust, couldn't bring herself to let go of the anger and resentment that had festered for so long. "I don't know if I can trust you, Elena," Lina said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You hurt me in ways you can't even imagine. How can I ever forgive you for that?" Elena reached out, her hand trembling as she touched Lina's arm. "I understand, Lina. I don't expect you to forgive me overnight. But I promise you, I'll do whatever it takes to earn back your trust. I'll prove to you that I've changed, that I'm not the same person I was back then." Lina pulled away, her heart heavy with doubt and uncertainty. Could she really trust Elena again, after everything that had happened between them? Could she let go of the pain and betrayal that had defined their relationship for so long? As she looked into Elena's eyes, searching for some sign of sincerity, Lina realized that the path to forgiveness would be long and fraught with challenges. But deep down, beneath the layers of hurt and anger, a small spark of hope flickered to life. Perhaps, she thought, it was possible to rebuild what had been broken, to find redemption in the ashes of betrayal. But only time would tell if trust could truly be restored, or if the wounds of the past would forever cast a shadow over their fragile bond. The game of deceit. The days passed in a haze of uncertainty and tension as Lina wrestled with her conflicting emotions towards Elena. Despite her desire to move forward, doubts continued to plague her, whispering of past betrayals and broken trust. Each interaction with Elena felt like a delicate dance, a game of cat and mouse in which Lina struggled to discern truth from deception. One evening, as Lina sat alone in her apartment, the phone rang, shattering the silence like a thunderclap. She hesitated for a moment before picking up, her heart pounding in her chest. "Hello," she said, her voice trembling with apprehension. "Lina, it's Elena," came the voice on the other end of the line. "I need to talk to you. Can we meet?" Lina's mind raced as she considered the request. Part of her longed for closure, for a chance to confront Elena and lay the ghosts of the past to rest. But another part of her, a part that still harbored doubts and fears, hesitated to let Elena back into her life. "I don't know, Elena," Lina said, her voice strained. "I'm not sure if that's such a good idea." Elena's voice took on a note of urgency. "Please, Lina. It's important. There are things I need to tell you, things you deserve to know." Lina felt a flicker of curiosity stirring inside her. What could Elena possibly have to tell her? Was it a genuine attempt to make amends, or was it just another ploy in the game of deceit that had defined their relationship? Against her better judgment, Lina agreed to meet Elena, her heart heavy with apprehension. They arranged to meet at a nearby cafe, a neutral location where they could speak freely without fear of interruption. As Lina arrived at the cafe, she felt a knot of tension forming in the pit of her stomach. She scanned the room anxiously, her eyes searching for Elena's familiar face. It wasn't long before she spotted her sitting alone at a table in the corner, her expression somber. Lina approached cautiously, her steps hesitant as she took a seat opposite Elena. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared history hanging heavy in the air. "I'm sorry, Lina," Elena said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry for everything I put you through. I never meant to hurt you." Lina felt a surge of emotion welling up inside her. Despite her reservations, there was something in Elena's words that struck a chord with her, a glimmer of sincerity that she couldn't ignore. "I want to believe you, Elena," Lina said, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "But it's hard. You hurt me in ways I can't even begin to describe." Elena reached out, her hand trembling as she touched Lina's arm. "I know, Lina. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it up to you. But there's something you need to know, something that might help you understand why I did what I did." Lina's curiosity was piqued. What could Elena possibly have to tell her that she didn't already know? She listened intently as Elena began to speak, her words a mixture of regret and remorse. "It wasn't just me, Lina," Elena said, her voice shaking with emotion. "There were others involved, people who manipulated me into betraying your trust. I was just a pawn in their game, a means to an end." Lina's eyes widened in shock. "Others? Manipulation?" The pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, painting a picture of deception and deceit that went far beyond Elena's actions alone. "Who were they?" Lina asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Elena hesitated, her gaze dropping to her hands. "I don't know their names. They were powerful people, people who had a lot to lose if the truth came out. They threatened me, coerced me into doing their bidding." Lina felt a surge of anger rising up inside her. How could Elena have kept such a thing from her for so long? And if what she said was true, then who else was involved in the web of lies and deception that had ensnared them both? But even as the questions swirled in her mind, a small part of Lina couldn't help but feel a flicker of sympathy for Elena. If what she said was true, then perhaps there was more to their shared history than she had realized. As they sat together in the dimly lit cafe, the weight of their past hanging heavy between them, Lina realized that the game of deceit they had been playing was far from over. But perhaps, she thought, it was time to stop playing by someone else's rules and start writing their own. Pieces of the puzzle. In the days following her meeting with Elena, Lina found herself consumed by a whirlwind of emotions. The revelations about their shared past had shaken her to the core, casting doubt on everything she thought she knew. As she sifted through the fragments of memories and half-truths, she began to see the intricate web of deceit that had ensnared them both. One evening, as Lina sat alone in her apartment, lost in thought, there was a knock at the door. She started, her heart pounding in her chest as she glanced nervously at the clock. Who could be visiting at this hour? With a sense of trepidation, Lina approached the door, her mind racing with fear and uncertainty. She peered through the peephole, her breath catching in her throat as she saw the figure on the other side. It was Javier. Javier, Lina said, her voice tinged with surprise. What are you doing here? Javier's expression was grave as he stepped inside, his eyes scanning the room with a sense of urgency. Lina, we need to talk. It's about Elena. Lina felt a surge of anxiety welling up inside her. What could Javier possibly know about Elena that she didn't already know? Was there more to their shared history than she had realized? What about Elena? Lina asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Javier hesitated for a moment before speaking, his words measured and careful. I've been doing some digging into her past, Lina. And I think I've uncovered something that might explain why she came back into your life. Lina's eyes widened in surprise. What do you mean? Javier took a deep breath, his gaze steady as he met Lina's. I think Elena might be connected to the Tonio family. Lina felt a chill run down her spine at the mention of the Tonios. The memories of that fateful night came flooding back, a rush of fear and uncertainty. She had uncovered their secrets, saved Anna, and yet the darkness still lingered. How is that possible? Lina asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. What could Elena possibly have to do with them? Javier's expression darkened. I'm not sure yet. But I found some evidence linking Elena to the Tonios, evidence that suggests she may have been working with them all along. Lina's mind raced as she tried to make sense of Javier's words. If Elena was connected to the Tonios, then everything she thought she knew about their shared past was called into question. Could she have been deceived by Elena all along? And if so, what did that mean for their fragile bond? We need to confront Elena, Lina said, her voice tinged with determination. We need to get to the bottom of this, once and for all. Javier nodded, his expression grim. Agreed. But we need to be careful, Lina. If Elena is involved with the Tonios, then we're dealing with dangerous people. We can't afford to take any chances. As they sat together in the dimly lit apartment, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, painting a picture of deception and betrayal that went far beyond anything Lina had imagined. But even as she grappled with the weight of their shared history, a small part of her couldn't help but wonder if there was still more to uncover, more secrets waiting to be revealed. And as they prepared to confront Elena, Lina knew that the answers they sought might just lead them into the heart of darkness itself. The mask of sanity. The air hung heavy with tension as Lina and Javier made their way to Elena's apartment, each step a silent acknowledgement of the danger that lurked just beyond their reach. The revelations about Elena's possible connection to the Tonio family had cast a shadow of doubt over their fragile bond, leaving Lina grappling with conflicting emotions and unanswered questions. As they approached Elena's building, Lina's heart pounded in her chest, the weight of uncertainty bearing down on her with each passing moment. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap, that the truth they sought might be more elusive than they had anticipated. With a sense of trepidation, Lina knocked on Elena's door, her knuckles rapping against the wood with a sense of urgency. They waited in tense silence, the seconds stretching into eternity as they braced themselves for whatever lay on the other side. When the door finally opened, Elena stood before them, her expression unreadable. There was a flicker of surprise in her eyes as she took in their presence, but it was quickly replaced by a mask of calm composure. "Lina," Javier, Elena said, her voice steady. "What brings you here?" Lina felt a surge of anger rising up inside her at Elena's calm facade. How could she stand there so calmly, knowing what she had done? Knowing the pain and betrayal she had caused? "We need to talk," Lina said, her voice tinged with accusation. "About the Tonio family." Elena's mask slipped for a moment, a flicker of fear flashing in her eyes before she regained her composure. "I don't know what you're talking about, Lina. I told you, I have nothing to do with them." Javier stepped forward, his gaze piercing as he fixed Elena with a steady stare. "We have evidence linking you to the Tonios, Elena. Evidence that suggests you may have been working with them all along." Elena's eyes widened in surprise, her mask of composure faltering for a moment before she regained control. "That's ridiculous, Javier. You have no proof." "We have enough to warrant an investigation," Javier said, his voice firm. "And if what we suspect is true, then you'll be facing some very serious charges." Lina watched as Elena's facade crumbled before her eyes, the mask of sanity slipping away to reveal the darkness beneath. She had trusted Elena once, had believed in the sincerity of her words, but now, faced with the truth of her betrayal, she couldn't help but feel a sense of profound disillusionment. "You lied to me," Lina said, her voice trembling with emotion. "You manipulated me, deceived me. How could you do that to someone you claimed to care about?" Elena's expression softened, a hint of sadness in her eyes. "I did what I had to do, Lina. I didn't have a choice." Lina felt a surge of anger rising up inside her at Elena's words. How dare she try to justify her actions? How dare she try to shift the blame onto others? "You always have a choice," Lina said, her voice filled with conviction. "You chose to betray my trust, to deceive me for your own gain. And now, you'll have to face the consequences of your actions." As they stood in the dimly lit hallway, the weight of their shared history hanging heavy between them, Lina realized that the truth they sought might not bring the closure she had hoped for. But even as she grappled with the pain of Elena's betrayal, she knew that confronting the darkness was the first step on the path to healing. And as they prepared to face whatever lay ahead, Lina couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope that, in the end, justice would prevail. Unseen enemy. In the aftermath of their confrontation with Elena, Lina and Javier found themselves thrust into a web of uncertainty and danger, each step forward fraught with the threat of unseen enemies lurking in the shadows. As they delved deeper into the investigation, they uncovered a tangled web of deceit and betrayal that stretched far beyond what they had imagined. The Tonio family's connections ran deep, their influence reaching into the highest echelons of power. And at the center of it all stood Elena, a puppet master pulling the strings from behind the scenes. But even as they closed in on the truth, Lina couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that their every move was being monitored by an unseen enemy. Paranoia gnawed at her insides, whispering of threats lurking just beyond their reach. One evening, as Lina sat alone in her apartment, lost in thought, there was a soft knock at the door. She started, her heart pounding in her chest as she glanced nervously at the clock. Who could be visiting at this hour? With trembling hands, Lina approached the door, her mind racing with fear and uncertainty. She peered through the peephole, her breath catching in her throat as she saw the figure on the other side. It was Anna. "Anna," Lina said, her voice tinged with surprise. "What are you doing here?" Anna's expression was grave as she stepped inside, her eyes scanning the room with a sense of urgency. "Lina, we need to talk. It's about Javier." Lina's heart skipped a beat at the mention of Javier's name. What could Anna possibly have to tell her about him? Was he in danger? "What about Javier?" Lina asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Anna hesitated for a moment before speaking, her words measured and careful. "I think he might be in trouble, Lina. I've been doing some digging into his past, and I found something that doesn't add up." Lina felt a surge of fear welling up inside her. What could Anna have uncovered about Javier that she didn't already know? Was he keeping secrets from her? "What did you find?" Lina asked, her voice tinged with apprehension. Anna's gaze grew somber as she met Lina's eyes. "I think Javier might be working with the Tonio family." Lina's blood ran cold at the mention of the Tonios. The memories of their shared past came flooding back, a rush of fear and uncertainty. She had uncovered their secrets, saved Anna, and yet the darkness still lingered. "How is that possible?" Lina asked, her voice trembling with fear. What could Javier possibly have to do with them? Anna's expression darkened. "I'm not sure yet. But I found some evidence linking Javier to the Tonios, evidence that suggests he may have been working with them all along." Lina's mind raced as she tried to make sense of Anna's words. If Javier was connected to the Tonios, then everything she thought she knew about him was called into question. Could she have been deceived by Javier all along? And if so, what did that mean for their fragile bond? "We need to confront Javier," Anna said, her voice tinged with determination. "We need to get to the bottom of this, once and for all." As they prepared to confront Javier, Lina couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap, that the truth they sought might be more elusive than they had anticipated. But even as they braced themselves for the confrontation ahead, she knew that they couldn't afford to back down. For if there was one thing she had learned, it was that the greatest dangers often lay hidden in plain sight, waiting to strike when least expected. Confronting the truth, the air crackled with tension as Lina and Anna made their way to confront Javier, each step forward a silent acknowledgement of the uncertainty that loomed ahead. The revelations about Javier's possible connection to the Tonio family had cast a shadow of doubt over their once solid bond, leaving Lina grappling with conflicting emotions and unanswered questions. As they approached Javier's apartment, Lina's heart pounded in her chest, the weight of uncertainty bearing down on her with each passing moment. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap, that the truth they sought might be more elusive than they had anticipated. With a sense of trepidation, Lina knocked on Javier's door, her knuckles rapping against the wood with a sense of urgency. They waited in tense silence, the seconds stretching into eternity as they braced themselves for whatever lay on the other side. When the door finally opened, Javier stood before them, his expression guarded. There was a flicker of surprise in his eyes as he took in their presence, but it was quickly replaced by a mask of composure. "Lina," Anna Javier said, his voice tinged with caution. "What brings you here?" Lina felt a surge of anxiety welling up inside her at the sight of Javier's calm demeanor. How could he stand there so calmly, knowing what they had uncovered? Knowing the pain and betrayal he had caused? "We need to talk," Javier, Lina said, her voice tinged with accusation. "About your connection to the Tonio family." Javier's mask slipped for a moment, a flicker of fear flashing in his eyes before he regained his composure. "I don't know what you're talking about, Lina. I have no connection to them." Anna stepped forward, her gaze piercing as she fixed Javier with a steady stare. "We have evidence linking you to the Tonios, Javier. Evidence that suggests you may have been working with them all along." Javier's eyes widened in surprise, his facade faltering for a moment before he regained control. "That's ridiculous, Anna. You have no proof." "We have enough to warrant an investigation," Lina said, her voice firm. "And if what we suspect is true, then you'll be facing some very serious charges." Javier's expression darkened, his eyes narrowing in suspicion. "This is absurd, Lina. I thought you trusted me." Lina felt a surge of guilt welling up inside her at Javier's words. She had trusted him once, had believed in the sincerity of his words, but now, faced with the truth of his betrayal, she couldn't help but feel a sense of profound disillusionment. "I did trust you," Javier, Lina said, her voice filled with sadness. "But you lied to me, manipulated me. How could you do that to someone you claimed to care about?" Javier's mask slipped further, a hint of desperation creeping into his voice. "I had no choice, Lina. You have to believe me. I was just trying to protect you." Lina felt a surge of anger rising up inside her at Javier's words. How dare he try to justify his actions? How dare he try to shift the blame onto her? "You always have a choice," Javier, Lina said, her voice tinged with frustration. "You chose to betray my trust, to deceive me for your own gain. And now, you'll have to face the consequences of your actions." As they stood in the dimly lit hallway, the weight of their shared history hanging heavy between them, Lina realized that the truth they sought might not bring the closure she had hoped for. But even as she grappled with the pain of Javier's betrayal, she knew that confronting the darkness was the first step on the path to healing. And as they prepared to face whatever lay ahead, Lina couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope that, in the end, justice would prevail. The final twist in the aftermath of the confrontation with Javier, Lina found herself grappling with a whirlwind of emotions. Doubt and uncertainty gnawed at her insides, leaving her reeling from the revelations that had shattered the fragile illusion of trust she had built with those closest to her. As she sat alone in her apartment, lost in thought, there was a soft knock at the door. Lina hesitated for a moment before rising to answer it, her heart pounding in her chest with a sense of trepidation. When she opened the door, she was surprised to find Anna standing on the other side, her expression somber. "Anna, what are you doing here?" Lina asked, her voice tinged with concern. Anna hesitated for a moment before speaking, her words measured and careful. "Lina, there's something I need to tell you. Something important." Lina felt a flicker of unease stirring inside her at Anna's words. What could she possibly have to tell her now, after everything they had been through? "What is it, Anna?" Lina asked, her voice tinged with apprehension. Anna took a deep breath, her gaze steady as she met Lina's eyes. "I've been doing some digging into the investigation, trying to piece together all the puzzle pieces. And I think I may have found something that changes everything." Lina's heart skipped a beat at the mention of new evidence. What could Anna have uncovered that they hadn't already discovered? What did you find? Lina asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Anna hesitated for a moment before speaking, her voice tinged with urgency. I think we've been looking at this all wrong, Lina. I think Javier and Elena may have been set up, pawns in a much larger game. Lina's eyes widened in surprise at Anna's revelation. Set up? By whom? And for what purpose? What do you mean? Lina asked, her voice tinged with confusion. Anna took a deep breath, her words coming out in a rush. I think the real enemy might be someone we never suspected. Someone who has been pulling the strings from behind the scenes, manipulating us all for their own gain. Lina felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through her veins at Anna's words. If what she said was true, then everything they thought they knew about the investigation was called into question. But who? Lina asked, her voice tinged with frustration. Who could possibly be behind all of this? Anna's gaze grew steely, her expression determined. I'm not sure yet. But I intend to find out. And when I do, we'll finally have the answers we've been searching for. As they stood together in the dimly lit apartment, the weight of their shared history hanging heavy between them, Lina realized that the final twist in their journey was still yet to come. But even as uncertainty loomed on the horizon, she knew that with Anna by her side, she would stop at nothing to uncover the truth, no matter where it might lead. Reflections from the window as Lina sat alone in her apartment, gazing out of the window at the bustling city below, she couldn't help but feel a sense of quiet satisfaction wash over her. The events of the past few weeks had been tumultuous, filled with twists and turns that had tested her in ways she never thought possible. But through it all, she had emerged stronger, more resilient than ever before. The truth had finally come to light, revealing the intricate web of deceit and betrayal that had ensnared them all. Javier and Elena had been mere pawns in a much larger game, manipulated by unseen forces for their own gain. And while the wounds of their betrayal still lingered, Lina found solace in the knowledge that justice had been served. But as she reflected on the events that had led them to this point, Lina couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude for those who had stood by her side through it all. Anna, with her unwavering determination and unwavering loyalty, had been a constant source of strength and support, guiding them through the darkest of times. And Javier, despite his betrayal, had shown a glimpse of redemption in the end, sacrificing himself to expose the truth and protect those he cared about. His actions had been a reminder that even in the darkest of moments, there was still hope for redemption, still the possibility of forgiveness. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the city streets, Lina felt a sense of peace settle over her. The shadows of the past had finally been banished, replaced by the promise of a brighter tomorrow. And as she turned away from the window, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, Lina knew that no matter what the future held, she would always carry with her the lessons she had learned and the strength she had gained from confronting the truth.